I've found over the years that I've been reaching for two frameworks in particular. And those two frameworks are design thinking, which is essentially a framework for innovation that brings human-centered creativity, different ways of thinking and working to complex problems. When the problem is complex, it turns out to be an incredibly powerful way for us to move forward more quickly. So much so that there are studies that show that companies that use design thinking get to market 2 times faster, have higher revenues and much higher returns. So design thinking is rock solid as a way of working that produces very impressive results. Next to it, though, is objectives and key results. OKRs provide a clear framework for setting ambitious goals and aligning efforts towards measurable outcomes. So we have two sides here. We have all that innovation and alignment and working together in these collaborative and creative ways. Great. But we have right next to it, taking all of that energy and directing it towards ambitious objectives that have very clear markers or very clear results that we can measure our progress against. OKRs were popularized at Google. Many other companies beyond tech use them as well, and many others are also using the design thinking framework. So all of the organizations that are noted at the bottom of the slide, for them, this is motherhood now. Right? For many other organizations and some clients that I've worked with, brand new. I think of SALT as bridging the gap between this more recent way of thinking and working to help people who, for whatever reason, haven't come across it yet. And I want to bridge that gap in a way that is efficient and proficient for people. We don't have time to go to courses and to read books and try to internalize it. I want to help people use it in an exact, precise, and productive way. And that's why I rolled them together into this construct or model that I'm calling PeakForm. And PeakForm means something to me, having just done a big hike with my husband in the Pacific Northwest. I didn't have poles and my shoes were too small. And I was fit enough, but the rice cake didn't really touch sides by the time we got to the lake. And I think that a lot of us are doing our work without being in PeakForm, without really having what we need to do it in the way that makes it easier for us and our teams. So that's what the name is all about. But if you look at what it's trying to do, these words highlighted in blue, they're the polar opposite of what we were seeing on all those barriers. So now we've got action-oriented frameworks that are all about translating aspirations into outcomes. We're going to blend creativity and focused execution. We're going to tackle that strategic alignment and map it together with innovation. And at the end of the day, and we'll see examples of this in the case study, we will make sure that we don't leave anybody behind and that team members feel ownership, feel that they're collaborating, and they have, most importantly, particularly for our next generation, a sense of purpose. And they understand why they're doing what they do. So let's see how this all works. Essentially, again, this is from practice rather than theory, what I see happening most often is that there's a flow between these two frameworks, depending on where you are in the story. So often when we start working with clients, when we're trying to untangle all of this, the first point is to align on aspirations. We have to make sure we're heading in the right direction. We're mapping to the strategy. We know what our future state is. We know what our current state is. And design thinking methods are very powerful for that and can get that work done very well, very quickly. A lot of this is about doing productive work with teams in a truncated amount of time because that's all the time we really have. So we do some work around aspirations, and then we know where we're going and what our current challenges are so that we can start to think about our objectives. When we start thinking about objectives, we're moving from the blue world into the purple world, which is all about OKRs. How do we set those objectives? What does a good objective look like? What's a good key result? How do we map our initiatives? How do we get tactical about setting up those objectives? Great. Now we've done all that work. We're super excited about our objectives, our key results. We're even maybe doing some work to get there. But invariably, if we're doing this, we're not looking to keep doing everything we've been doing up until now in exactly the same way. This is usually brought in where we're looking for change. We're looking for growth or innovation or better alignment. So something is going to need to change. And when we think about how we're going to execute differently, that's when we reach back in step 3 into our design thinking toolkit, because now we're going to achieve those objectives and key results in a more innovative, more creative, proficient way. And we're only going to focus on the parts of our programs that are weak or missing. So we're going to identify those gaps, the stuff that we've identified as going well, we're going to keep doing. But we probably are missing things because we've set up more objective, more ambitious goals. And we've realized that some of the things that we're doing are not really getting us there. So there's going to be design sprints and innovation sessions, and we're going to have to figure out how to resource all these new initiatives. So we'll have a different program to get it done. And then once we've done that, then we need to go back to the discipline of the OKR model, which is a unique way of tracking the progress towards these key results, understanding what's working and what's not working right when it's happening and iterating, and very clearly celebrating success or providing support if things are not going well. So we get that flow, and obviously there's going to be times where we'll have to reassess and realign, but this is the back and forth that I've seen tends to happen naturally when you put these two frameworks together. I just want to touch on what these two frameworks are so that we can get our language and understanding at more or less a consistent place. So let's start with design thinking. I see it as a framework for innovation. Innovation is important here because design thinking is almost the codification of how innovators naturally think and work. So for those of us who were not born innovators, we're all creative, but some of us are more innovative than others. For those of us who actually need a little bit of structure about how to innovate, design thinking is our go-to toolkit. And the reason why is because it brings human-centered creativity. And what I mean by that, and you'll see this in our session, is that we're thinking about who we're designing for, and we're working with our colleagues in a very human-centered way to be creative and come up with solutions. And like I said earlier, we're using it for complex problem solving. We're using it when we're stumped. It comes together as a result of, in my experience, understanding the framework, recognizing that we're showing up in a different way with different mindsets, but almost more importantly, knowing how to do it, actually knowing the methods. So just to touch on these for a minute, this is a framework rather than a process, because sometimes you come in at different places. But ideally, what design thinking is telling us is if you're going to change something, make sure you understand it deeply first. Many leaders feel like they need to know the answer in the first 5 minutes. Design thinking gives them the excuse to stop and think and go deep first in a productive way. So we can be very efficient in how we do this work, but we need to understand first by empathizing and defining the challenge. And if you're looking at the shapes, it's because another core element of design thinking is the ability through methods to look at a lot of information, whether it's in the understand phase or the create phase, to diverge is the word design thinkers use, and to very quickly converge or come together on the ones that matter most or have the most impact. So we're seeing these diamond shapes. It's taking us from this empathize, etc., all the way through to ideating, coming up with lots of ideas, and then de-risking the execution by prototyping and testing first. Working in this way and thinking in this way helps us show up in a different way at work. Again, I'm dating myself, but being very empathetic and imaginative and questioning, we know that to get the types of results that we need, we have to show up differently. And the way that we show up differently is by investing in the capabilities and mastering the methods. All of this goodness happens when people in the room know how to make it happen by bringing in the right methods and techniques. Of course, there's thousands of methods, but this is a good starting point. And this is what we use at Solve Collaboratory and what we integrate into our training programs. But that framework, those mindsets and those methods create a design thinking capability that is somewhat magical, as some of you who've used it may have seen. Great. What about this whole OKR thing that we keep talking about? So OKRs, they're going to provide a clear framework for setting ambitious goals and aligning efforts towards measurable outcomes. Now, if you think about this chart, if you look at objectives and key results, they're at the bottom of the pyramid, because what this is telling us is you don't do them in isolation, right? You have to do your objectives and key results in a way that supports the strategy, mission, and vision of your organization. So that requires you and your teams to understand that strategy, vision, and mission. Objectives and key results are going to help us actually bridge that execution gap. So what are they? Objectives are going to answer the question of where do I need to go? They're statements that inspire and set direction. They're aspirational. Your key results are going to be, how do I know I'm getting there? We need to be able to know whether we're making the progress we say we're trying to make. And then all of that is good and well, but I actually have to have initiatives to get me there. So those are the key elements of the objectives and key results model. And it's almost equally as important to understand what OKRs are not. They're not performance measurement tools. And this is top of the list, because if the people creating the OKRs are worried about whether they're going to be able to do them, otherwise they will be critiqued in their performance review, they won't set ambitious goals. So performance management and how people are getting their bonuses and all of that, separate conversation from working together as a team to set ambitious objectives and key results. This is not about having a to-do list, right? It's not about busy work. It's about really emphasizing outcomes. Sure, thinking about initiatives, but keeping an eye on the ball on the outcomes. It's not KPIs. A lot of people get confused with this. KPIs, and you think about a driving metaphor, might be how much gas do we have in the tank, and where's the oil, and what's the heater. These are things that are indicators that we're doing okay. These are not them. They're also not static. We're not going to do them once and move on. If we do that, they don't work. So when we design OKRs, the actual OKRs that we work towards are usually in 90-day cycles, because that's where you can feel the pressure of, okay, I've got 90 days. I can maybe breathe today, but I can't relax forever because I have a lot of work to do. And I'm going to be tracking my progress all the way through. And almost most importantly, they are not top-down mandates. These are collaboratively designed by the people who are going to achieve them. And this goes a long way towards changing the dynamic about having low motivation and being disengaged. So this is the corrective work that we're going to be doing there. So that's fly through of design thinking and OKRs.